So this is very much part of the othering of Puerto Rico,
Right.
something that's exotic and different, and is stereotyped and romanticized, but at the same time, it needs to be tamed. It needs to be Americanized and supposedly improved.
Right.
As it were, westernized.
Exactly. Precisely.
Thank you. All right, I'll pass over to Joe because there's another question in the chat.
Yes, and this question comes from Brenda Franco. Carlos, my question is, nowadays, what is Puerto Rico's economy based on other than tourism?
That's a hard question. And I'm going to tell you why that's a hard question. Because I was amazed by this years ago when Hurricane Maria hit, and as devastating as that was, I was, interested to see, not only what the government would do, but also how private interests would react. And I had no idea what to expect. And I remember reading somewhere, I forget what, it was on a secondary source. It stated something along the lines of that during economic downturns, Puerto Rico leans on tourism to try to spur its economy. And interestingly, a couple of months after Hurricane Maria, I'm watching TV, and lo and behold, I see a huge advertisement of Puerto Rican tourism and how hotels weren't too damaged, and we're open for business. We need people to come here and invest and spend their money. So that was a big thing then, and unfortunately, that's still the case today. Tourism is unfortunately a still one of the biggest engines of the economy, even though it doesn't do great for most people. I don't know if anyone was aware, but during COVID, like there were a lot of cases were taking place in Puerto Rico because a lot of Americans went into the island, and many of them didn't mask up or do anything precautionary, and people got very sick. But it's still, tourism is still very much part of the economy. The rents are going up significantly rather. People are getting priced out of certain, neighborhoods that they've been a part of for generations. Aside from tourism, to answer your question directly, is pharmaceuticals. Puerto Rico is one of the, biggest places in the world that manufactures pharmaceuticals. So that's still pretty much a part of the economy there. But aside from that, I can't really think of anything else. It's mostly service oriented, and if you go there, the economy is so much in shambles because the public sector is getting sucked out of the island to an extent. So I can't really speak to more than tourism and pharmaceuticals, which there's a history regarding that too, of the pharmaceutical and medical industry on the island, which it's a whole other thing that goes into how Puerto Ricans were viewed. And I didn't necessarily get into that, but that's a whole other thing.
Yes, I mean, clearly the image of Puerto Rico as it's been fashioned over the decades still shapes people's image in the US of Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans today. To what extent, Carlos, do you think that this legacy is, what do you think is the legacy of this in terms of Puerto Rico's future? And, to what extent do you think this image needs to change, for example?
And I think this is the perfect question, because at the end of this paper, I mentioned, you know, these images can help you identify both the past and the future. What I mean by that is that you can kind of use what I just gave you all and apply it for when you see images of Puerto Rico in the future, of how it's being depicted, and you know, how it's being spoken about and how it's being exposed. I don't know if anybody saw the movie Joker, which was a big deal in 2019 when it came out, but there was a huge advertisement of Puerto Rico in the beginning of the movie. Like it was I don't know if anybody noticed that, but I found that really fascinating. And I also was like taken aback of like, okay, this is, you know, my research is somewhat, you know, relevant here, that you can actually see something like this and kind of understand why it's there. But in terms of, you know, the future and the legacy of this, it's gonna take a lot of hard work. You know, a lot of people at the moment, you know, with cryptocurrency and other, you know, neoliberal practices, the land is being bought up at a rapid pace for relatively cheap. And yeah, it's gonna take a lot of work, you know, because a lot of the things are shifting towards, you know, how beautiful it is, but also how it's tax exempt, and you know, businesses are beginning to exploit. I mean, not beginning, they've continued to exploit, but it's become more of a narrative now with the Paul brothers, the you know, the YouTube sensations that have been doing, you know, boxing events of late. They've been at the forefront of advertising Puerto Rico as a, you know, a tax haven of sorts. So I really honestly don't know what the course is in the future. Like, what I tell people all the time is we need to stop looking at the beaches, stop looking at the rum, stop looking at the food, and look at the people, and look at the fact that it's a place, and a place can be beautiful, a place can be inspiring, but at the same time, a place has problems. All places have problems, and in a way to, you know, to not exploit a place like Puerto Rico and other places across the Caribbean is acknowledging that a lot of the problems stem from colonialism itself. So that's where it all starts. It's acknowledging what the problems are. And if we can acknowledge what the problems are in the media, which you have seen some discussion of, although not enough, but if we can talk more about what the problem is, the legacy of how Puerto Rico's image has been shaped will hopefully get into a more positive direction and to a more realistic direction. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have on that particular thread, because yeah, it's a very important question to really ponder on.
Thank you, Carlos. We have one final question from Professor Sarah Pollock. She asked, do you mind speaking a little about your own trajectory for students who might be interested in a similar career path? Any particular recommendations?
Yes, I would say focus very heavily on trying to find internships and volunteering. One of the things that you'll hear in the classroom and in other places is, you know, networking is everything. And let me tell you, networking genuinely is everything. That's what's going to get you. That's what's going to get you in the door of most, you know, of the things that you might want to do in the future. You know, if I wasn't at the, if I wasn't at the NYGMB as an intern, I wouldn't have the job that I have today. But at the same time, it took me to actually walk into my future boss's office and ask questions and things of those sorts. But I would highly recommend trying to get involved you know, whether it's the National Archives or, you know, other institutions that are looking for volunteers and interns, and you'll be able to find them, especially now during, you know, we're still in COVID, but as we continue to progress through this pandemic, like a lot of institutions need help right now. And they're gonna need people, you know, to volunteer or to intern. So, you know, try to dedicate time in contributing to other institutions that may need your help now, and be very vocal. This is one thing, be very vocal about what it is that you want out of an internship. Don't just go in thinking, you know, I'm just going to do whatever they tell me to do. And, you know, you're going to do some of that because that's what comes with it. But you need to emphasize what it is that you need from the experience, because it's your experience. So once you do that, I think everything else will slowly but surely fall into place. You know, be patient, be fair with yourself, and I can see you getting to where you need to be. But like I said, if you communicate what it is that you want and what you need from an experience, whether you're a volunteer intern, you know, you can, and networking, of course, you will get where you need to be.
Thank you, Carlos, very much. And I hope that this lecture today will inspire some of our students to pursue not only the history of Puerto Rico, but also public history as a degree, as a certificate, we hope, in the certificate program at CSI, and as a career. Okay, we are almost up with time, so I'd like to close the question session and to thank everybody here for attending. I'd like to thank our speaker, Carlos, for his wonderful presentation and fielding our questions. I'd like to thank all our people who have asked questions, and I hope that we'll see you again in the spring lecture series, which we'll be organizing in due course in the spring 2022 semester. So thank you again. And if you're interested in public history, I see Professor Susan Smith-Peter has put something in the chat. You can contact Professor Susan Smith-Peter about the public history program in the history department at CSI. And again, I also thank the Professor Sarah Polak for the co-sponsorship of the LACLS program at the College of Staten Island. So thank you, everybody. Thank you also, Joe, for his co-moderation and technical skill. And thank you, Carlos, again. And
thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And I hope that we will see everybody in the spring. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Righty. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Joseph. Take care.